crore cases pending is not a very complimentary thing because it takes away a lot of business confidence. But, look at many success stories here. I mean, Shri, who spoke so elegantly about you, I hope somebody's recorded it, because at least Urmi was finally going to believe whatever Shri says. But look at her success story. When I was studying, or Palavat was studying here, there was no Jayashree party, Jayashree schools out here. Or, you know what Rajesh Ajmera and, Rajiv Arora have created. They had no background, about jewelry. If you ever came to the MI Road, sir, that Mirza Ismail Road, which was where all the foreigners and the VIPs used to come for shopping. They would go to Gem Palace, they will go to Tariamal Balchand, but the address will change to Amrapali. You have to give credit to. So for me, as long as you can dream with your eyes open, and in a lot of ways, what Mr. Murthy said, be agile and execute. And if the people who are not executing, at least ask them to sit on the side and watch movies, but do not make others' life difficult. So I do believe that opportunity is in execution.
No, thank you. And that's a great segue to, you took the examples of Jayashree, you took the examples of Rajiv ji, I think Ajay, a lot of people that I have at least met many times, is an example of being, and the whole audience here.
Did you ever ask Ajay, before data became the fuel, how did his father name him Ajay Data?
That's what we call as data insight. So I think the great examples of people here who have come to listen primarily, sir, is around entrepreneurship. And obviously in India, or now, or even globally, whenever someone mentions the word entrepreneur, I'll have to be honest, your name comes up first. As someone who started from pretty much nowhere as a regular engineer and started the business and built it up to such a huge business that we all in India, some of us are competitors of that company, but we are all absolutely proud of what you've built. If you were to take this and look back, what do you think? Can you talk a little bit about the days that before you started Infosys? And what were some of the key lessons you learned back then that you would like to share with the teams here?
Well, entrepreneurship is all about conversion of an idea into a product or a service that creates jobs for a lot of youngsters, that creates good returns for the investors, and finally, that pays good taxes for the exchequer. Now, mostly entrepreneurs think of what has not been thought about by others. In fact, late Robert Kennedy, borrowing the words of George Bernard Shaw, said, "Most people see things as they are and wonder why. I dream of things that never are and then say, why not?" I think that in essence is what entrepreneurship is. When Infosys was founded in 1981, my first essay was a failure called Softronics, because I wrongly focused on the domestic market, domestic software services market. There were very few computers in the country at that time. Most of them were with the government. and the government was not very keen on using outside help. So anyway, I closed it down. The second one was founded when there was a huge explosion in the US in the form of super mini computers. These were computers which were inexpensive but had the power of mainframes. And number two, they also came with what we call online transaction processing monitors, which is very much required for commercial data processing, and what is called relational databases, the most advanced database management system. And I noticed that there was going to be a huge explosion in the US amongst the medium-sized corporations, amongst the small corporations, and amongst the various functions of large corporations to leverage the power of this technology. That's when I knew that market demand is not going to be a big issue. Fortunately for us, at that point in time, there were a lot of engineers who had no jobs in India. In fact, in the beginning, we probably had about 20 bright graduates from IIT Bombay in our company. We had from IIT Madras, IIT Kharagpur, all of that. But there were a lot of problems. First of all, there was no free licensing. Today, you can go and import. Of course, right now there is a rule that they may ban import of laptops and all of that from November. But those days, you had to get license from a committee of the Department of Electronics before you could import a computer. And that took 2 to 3 years, 50 visits to Delhi. Second, there was really no telephone. In fact, there used to be a minister of communications under Mrs. Gandhi called Stephens. When one of the members of the parliament complained that there was no telephone for him, he said, no, don't complain and all of that. Even madam's phone doesn't work properly. So why are you complaining? It took those days, it took 5 to 7 years to get a telephone connection. Third, there was no current account convertibility. What that meant is, if I had to travel abroad for 3 days, I had to first make an application to the Reserve Bank of India, and they would take 2 to 3 weeks. When I came back, I had to write a tour report and submit it to the Reserve Bank, all for 3 days travel. There is a real life story. It's not apocryphal. It is a real life story of a friend of mine. His name is Shri K.V. Ramani. He founded a very successful software company in Chennai called Future Software, then which he sold it to a foreign company. He applied to the Reserve Bank of India, Chennai branch, that he wanted to visit Paris for 2 days and Frankfurt for 1 day. Anyway, he got the approval and he goes to Paris. And then the person that he was to meet the second day, he said, no, I have been called by the head office to go to Frankfurt, so why don't you come and meet me in Frankfurt instead of Paris? So he ended up spending 1 day in Paris and 2 days in Frankfurt. And he submitted his report. Promptly came a show cause notice to him saying, while your approval was for 2 days in Paris and 1 day in Frankfurt, why did you spend 1 day in Paris and 2 days in Frankfurt? Why should we not punish you? I mean, this is the level. When I told Bimal, I used to be on the board of RBI. When I told him, he couldn't believe. He said he was just laughing for the whole day. We couldn't have been like that. So there were a lot of problems, and no bank understood what software was. No bank. They would not obviously give us a loan because they wanted a collateral. And they said, no, this is all just some paper that you are giving. Maybe there's some lines you have written, but we can't take it as the collateral. So there was no working capital or term loan that was possible for software. And finally, India was seen those days as a country of poverty, country of filth by foreigners, particularly Americans. So going and selling there was extremely difficult. And we have stayed in such hotels. We have stayed in Bronx, Harlem, because we didn't have money. And those places were very dangerous. And many times we would land at JFK airport and somehow manage to take a bath there and then go to the prospect to make a presentation. And in order to save money, we have stayed the whole night in the airport because we didn't want to spend unnecessary money because there was no money. So there were a lot of problems. But thanks to what Shri Narasimha Rao did, of course, Dr. Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram and Shri Montek Singh Ahluwalia were part of that team. Thanks to an extraordinary Prime Minister like Shri Narasimha Rao, they introduced the economic reforms of 1991, and they introduced current account convertibility, they abolished licensing, and by then they encouraged the telephone, thanks to Sam Pitroda, who introduced the 128 line EPABX. All those things disappeared like dew on a sunny morning. Let me stop here.
Brilliant, brilliant. It's almost a journey that I think all of us who've watched from very distant have seen this. CP, yours is an example which is recognized by a lot of people as an entrepreneur, as taking every opportunity within an organization and behaving like an entrepreneur. What would be your advice to many people who either are working in corporations large or whose children are joining corporations on how to build that culture of entrepreneur within an organization and behave like one?
Jagdish, there's some questions that you ask are very difficult to answer in this audience. The reason is that go back into the culture of Rajasthan first. That there is a Marwadi saying, "Jahan jaave gaadi, wahan jaave Marwadi." जहाँ ना पहुँचे
बैलगाड़ी वहाँ पहुँचे मारवाड़ी.
So point is that ultimately a fundamental of Narayan Murthy's entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship is that जहाँ ना पहुँचे बैलगाड़ी वहाँ पहुँचे मारवाड़ी. That means risk taker or be a doer. I mean, when you landed up in a JFK and you ended up sleeping on the airport, I mean, it's because you wanted to take that risk. And the reality is that some of us, me and Anu, my wife, we are at her uncle's house. And that time we used to live at uncle's house because we used to love the uncle. More than that, we didn't have money. So we have seen carjacking happening, and the advice coming from uncle was light off kar do. So the point is, that is an environment that Mr. Murthy was talking about. But an entrepreneur still took the risk. An entrepreneur still sold. So I'm again going back to the word sell, sell, sell.
Thank you. Thank you, CP. By the way, Mr. Murthy, when you were talking about the RBI people questioning about why 2 days in Frankfurt and 1 day in, Paris, I was reminded of my wife because that's the kind of questions I was wondering whether the RBI had people from his wife's side or not. But, Rajiv ji, this is probably a good segue to see if there are any questions that you want to ask from the audience that have sent to you.
Yes. No. I interact with them all the year. They know my story very well. And I can also share a lot of experiences like Mr. Murthy was, where I started like that. You have to, when you used to go out, you used to get $500. And if you go again in that year, you get only $20. And me and Rajesh, we used to take URail pass because then you don't have to go and stay in a hotel. You take a journey from Paris to Amsterdam, stay in the night in the train and do your work and then start again the evening journey to somewhere else. So this is a common story when people start a business. I always say, because I am also the president of Federation of Rice and Exporters, I used to say we are all exporters, carrying our goods, taking samples, and we became exporters afterwards. So we are here to listen what Mr. Murthy has to say, and I have received few questions from the audience. 1 minute, I have to open it. Very good questions from young students also. The first question is from Sagar Sharma, Chief Technology Officer in Gata Engineers Global Limited, to Mr. Murthy. Mr. Murthy, your leadership has been instrumental in shaping Infosys into a global tech powerhouse. Could you share a pivotal decision you made during your tenure that significantly influenced the company's trajectory? And what lessons can aspiring leaders draw from that experience? Any important decision you took at that time?
Sure. It was in 1995. We had already worked for 5 years with a Fortune 10 company. There were 4 companies which had worked, and they came back to negotiate the prices down. They had sequestered these 4 or 5 companies, I don't remember, in different rooms, in different floors at Taj Residency in Bangalore. They did so that each vendor would not discuss with the other vendor. Those days there was no mobile, nothing. And they would go to each room, negotiate very hard, all of that. But I had a discussion with all my younger colleagues, and I told them, I said, look, I always believed in doing business legally and ethically, but I have to make money hand over fist. I have to make a lot of money. During my entire time, we had, the last year was, we had 29% net income. That is after tax 29%. Anyway, so I told them, I said, look, we should not accept this reduction in price, because if we accept it with this company, we'll have to accept it with other companies too. And pretty soon, we will not have margins to give good salaries to employees, to install good technology, to buy good tools, to build good offices, to hire consultants from abroad in quality, productivity, branding, etc. So I said, I'm not in favor of accepting it. We would rather give away this business. At that time, this Fortune 10 company contributed 25% of our revenue. I was the only one. All my other colleagues, brilliant guys, they said, no, this should not happen because we just went public only 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago. How can you take such a tough decision? But I said, no, I will do that. Then I called my wife, because they were all on the other side. They were all bright people, good people, excellent human beings, but they were all worried that I was going to do something silly because I was going to give up a customer who had contributed 25%. So I called my wife and told her, I said, look, I'm going to take some decision now. Of course, I didn't tell her what decision it was. You have been looking after the children. Now, in the next 3 to 4 years, I will be away about 280 to 300 days in a year outside. And you have to bring up the children. She said, don't worry, I'm always there, I will do it. Then I came back and told the people, no, I'm not going to accept it. I will take bottom line responsibility to bring back the revenue. And the Fortune 10 company senior managers came, they sat there, and I was very respectful. And I told them, for these reasons, we would not be in a position to accept. And the rest is history. Actually, we grew much faster than we were growing earlier because, as CP said, I realized the importance of selling, importance of sacrifice, importance of staying at airports in the night. I said, there is no other way. And what that incident told me was that leaders have to demonstrate their commitment, their daring, their courage by example. There is nothing as powerful as leadership example. That's what we all learned from Mahatma Gandhi. I'm sure all of you know, Mahatma said, I want to live like the poorest Indian. So he had a loincloth, and he would eat very simple food, and he would travel by third class or whatever it is. Those days, I think it was third class. He would travel from place to place. But people, all his followers were scared. So there had to be plain clothes people traveling with him to make sure that whatever food was given to him was first tasted by somebody, because who knows? Somebody may poison him. Second, there will be hundreds and sometimes thousands of shake hands with him, all of that. So once Sarojini Naidu, whom Mahatma Gandhi liked, she was like his daughter kind of stuff. And she made fun of Mahatma, saying, it takes a fortune to keep this old man in poverty. So I think, I am a great devotee of Mahatma Gandhi. The biggest lesson I have learned from him is leadership by example, walking the talk. And I think if everybody, in every field, whether it's corporation, whether it's politics, whether it is bureaucracy, whether it's military, everywhere, whether it's academia, if the leaders led by example, then I do believe that this country will reach Ramaraja faster.
I got a very significant question because it is this artificial intelligence is an important topic these days whenever we discuss IT technology. Navya Agarwal from Shri International School. Mr. Murthy, given your extensive experience in the technology sector, how do you envision the responsible development and deployment of artificial intelligence to address complex global challenges while ensuring ethical considerations and human values are preserved?
Well, yes, you are right in some way because we are developing self-learning, semi-self-learning, and supervised algorithms in this era of AI. And AI supports self-learning and semi-self-learning algorithms. There is a danger of biases coming into decision. That's particularly in judiciary. That's what has happened in the US. Because at the end of the day, what AI is doing, it looks at all the data. In fact, that's what even generative AI does. It looks at all the data and then says, based on the pattern recognition that I have done, I think this is what you should do. So therefore, in several cases, what has happened is that some sections of the American society feel that they will suffer disproportionately due to these machine-driven algorithms. But my view has always been that other than in a few specific areas like autonomous driving or like using robots in hazardous environments or using robots in precision surgery, all of that, those are different. In most other applications, AI has to be used in an assistive manner. There is a thing called expert systems that most of you know, and basically what expert system does is it collects a lot of data from the past, and then it has a very good inference engine, and that inference engine say, look at this symptom, look at this symptom, look at this symptom, and then say, oh, it's likely you have whatever, COVID or whatever it is. But we cannot leave it completely to the machine. We should use the machine algorithm to become a very valuable assistant to the human being in improving his or her productivity, in improving the correctness of diagnosis, etc. So I personally feel that barring certain areas where human beings really cannot do, in other areas, I would rather use them as assistive technologies.
Can I take 2-3 questions more? Am I allowed to take two questions more? 2-3 questions? Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to leave at 8:30. Yes, we'll have to leave. Yes. So my friend Vimal Chaudhary is here in the audience. He is leading carpet manufacturer. His question to Mr. Murthy is, the concept of a global delivery model pioneered by Infosys has had a profound impact on the outsourcing industry. And he asked, that, could you elaborate on the inspiration behind this innovative approach and how it contributed to not only Infosys' success, but also the transformation of Indian IT sector as a whole?
Sorry, I didn't.
So the question is...
Give me a simple question, yeah.
Yes, global delivery model, how it changed the transformation of Indian IT sector as a whole.
Well,
what was the inspiration behind it? Why did you take this global inventory, global delivery model Infosys का क्या? What was the inspiration behind it?
No, well, when we first went to the United States to sell, they, the good ones, of course, most people didn't even agree to meet us. That's a different issue. But a small percentage of people who felt, oh, these poor fellows are coming all the way from a country called India, so let us meet them. So they spent a little bit of time, and we talked to them. Finally, they said, look, friends, when it is night in India, it is morning in the US. When it is morning in India, it is night here. So there is really no way you and I, your company and our company can work together. So don't waste your time. He didn't say don't waste our time. They said don't waste your time. So we came back and then we said, look, we have to create a formal model for collaborative distributed development of software that will indeed bridge the time zones to provide a 24-hour working day. Theoretically 24, but it could be 14 hours, 15 hours, 16 hours based on where the customer is. And we developed lot of tools for sending information from us to the customer and from the customer to us. There would be maybe one person at customer side, and there would be 10, 20 people here. So the first requirement was, how do you communicate very effectively using written documentation? You see, India is an oral culture. We have not embraced written culture. Even the rishis in the olden time, they would say, okay, if some Shishya worked with him for 10 years, they would whisper something in his ears. There's no book that they can refer to and all. Anyway. Yeah. So, we documented, we developed tools for communication, for reporting progress. Of course, there were project management software in some rudimentary manner in those days. I'm talking of late 80s. And then to protocol for communicating the actual success versus budgeted success, goals, that this should have happened by this date, and we have done only 80% of it because of reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, and these are the steps we have taken to overcome. Then steps to improve productivity, steps to use reusable code, many things we did. So when we went after about 6 months to the customers and spoke about the global delivery model, spoke about the kind of tools that we had developed, and spoke about 24-hour workday, they were amazed. They just couldn't believe, the same people. We can't imagine this. This is fantastic. And we also showed them how, because in India, because of the purchasing power parity, because of the lower per capita GDP, etc., and because of better work productivity that we are going to provide, thanks to all the quality certification that we are planning to get into, thanks to all the tools that we are doing, all of that, we showed them that the customer would actually get better value for money than if he or she got the software developed in their own country. As you people know, economists say price is what you pay, value is what you get from anything that you buy. So therefore, we realized pretty early that our task is to maximize value per unit price or value divided price in every transaction. So that's that.
So, Jagdish, you can ask the last question because he has to leave at 8:30. Yes.
Sure, sure. I think before I ask the last question, there's a small little story. And I think we've referred to President Obama in the conversation. The story is about President Obama and Michelle Obama going for dinner. And as they get into the restaurant, Michelle Obama meets this guy who's a waiter and gives her a hug and says, "Hey, Steve, good to see you." And he says, "Yeah, great to see you, Michelle." And they sit down for dinner. So Barack Obama asks Michelle, "Who's this guy?" Well, this is the guy I used to date in high school before I met you. And so President Obama gives a wry smile and says, "And now you married the President of the United States." Well, she asked, "You didn't ask me what he said." Well, what did he say? "Well, I wish you had married me. I would have been the President of the United States." So, in that context, to Mr. Murthy and to CP, and both of you referred to your spouses and partners in different contexts today, and the key role they played. Would you want to say something about how they helped you become the successful leader that you are, your spouse and your family? And then please close it by suggesting to the audience here, if there is one thing that you want to do to build strong teams, which is important for being a successful entrepreneur, what would that advice be? Thank you.
Well, my own view is, I don't know of any man, or let me put it this way, any person who has succeeded without the full cooperation of the spouse, whether it's woman or man, doesn't matter. The reason is, entrepreneurship is all about walking the untrodden path. It is about not knowing whether tomorrow there'll be food on the table or there's no food on the table. It's all about working extremely hard, 18 hours, 19 hours. It is all about being away from your loved ones, spouse, children, and all of that. I have personally felt and I have personally experienced that without the full support of the spouse, I don't think any person, any entrepreneur can make the needed sacrifice, can be away from the loved ones, can be away from home for such long hours. So therefore, it is only when your spouse provides you that kind of moral support. As I told you, when this Fortune 10 thing, I called my wife and she said, "Don't worry, I am 100% with you. Go ahead and do what you think is right." Because as a matter of principle, I never brought family into the company. In fact, I was telling CP this morning, the only regret I have in life is I just did not invite my mother, she's dead now, to visit Infosys. Because at that time I was slightly crazy. I thought professionalism is completely separating family from the office. Later on I realized it was wrong. I need not have taken it to that extent. So even in the case of, though I took money from my wife for the company, though she made all the sacrifices necessary, I deliberately did not involve her in any of the office complexities, because I wanted her to have excellent relationships with other wives. Because what happens when a few of you are working together in the office, there may be some difference of opinion. But tomorrow there will be something positive, so everything will be fine. But the wives remember only that negative stuff. And therefore, I mean, wife or spouse, whatever it is. Therefore, I never mixed the family and the office.
Lovely, lovely. So, I'm very conscious that Rajiv Arora started the program at 6:59. So I assume, and Jajuji has already come there. So it really means it's time to say goodbye. All I can say is that the word Ardhangani, in my case, Annu not only looked after the children, but she looked after my mother because I lost my father very early, and she was being a pillar of not only making me successful, but she has made Tech Mahindra successful. So I love you, Annu.
Thank you, but before we conclude, I would request Jaishiji to please come and extend the vote of thanks. I would request everyone to please keep sitting just for another 3-4 minutes.
Yes. So I'm sure, I hope there are more husbands like both of you sitting here. We'd love to hear these kind of compliments. But before I say the word of thanks, let me give you a brief introduction about Jajuji. He's our pillar in the JCF. Please do come forward. So Jajuji, Jai Kishan Jajuji, is the CMD of Subhash Ashish Group and is in the field of real estate. He's won national awards in the real estate as the most innovative developer for the best customer service. Please applaud him. He's also managing trustee of Jagrati, an NGO working for the upliftment of 5,600 underprivileged children free of cost in 18 schools. We are so proud of you, Jajuji. This is really work of humanity. He was awarded the National Award by our Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, and also he was a part of the delegation that went to Japan with him. He's been awarded with Shiksha Vibhushan Award for consecutively last 7 years by the Chief Minister, Government of Rajasthan. So ladies and gentlemen, today we've been truly privileged to gather here and be enlightened by the profound insights shared by the visionary Mr. N.R.Narayana Murthy ji on this pivotal topic of today, entrepreneurship. On behalf of the esteemed gathering, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Murthy for gracing us with his wisdom, with his experience. And not only have you sparked a digital revolution in the country, but you've also revolutionized our minds today. As we move forward, we shall keep these words in our hearts and work tirelessly to transform them into action that shape our destiny of our nation. इनके विचार, इनका विवेक और इनकी विनम्रता से हम धनी हैं और धनी होकर जा रहे हैं. We also thank our members of the print and electronic media, along with Seema Chopra from the Birla Auditorium, and of course our audience, for being eager and enthusiastic to imbibe all the wisdom imparted today. I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Mr. C.P. Gurnani and Mr. Jagdish Mitra. Both of you added so much of chutzpah here tonight. Your immense contribution ensuring that all of us today go back more enriched, more energized. This will always be remembered by all of us here. On behalf of the Jaipur Citizens Forum, I thank Government of Rajasthan and Tourism Department to ensure Rajasthan remains at the forefront of economy, culture, literature by encouraging such events and initiatives to come forward. For this, we owe our deep sense of gratitude to Mr. Vishwendra Singh, Tourism Minister, and Mrs. Gayatri Rathore, Tourism Principal Secretary. Today's discourse will become tomorrow's deliberation. Today's lessons will become tomorrow's life experiences, and today's motivation will become tomorrow's mantra. Thank you, good night, and thank you once again, all of you.
Can I request all the trustees to please come on stage for a photograph with the